Okay, this is a good time to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this presentation hosted by Alzheimer's Orange County. My name is Aroxy, and this will be a special presentation today on brain health, specifically on nutrition. You will all be placed on mute. If you do have a question, if you'd like to type a comment, please do that in the chat box. Either myself or my co-hosts will be able to see and reply. Other than that, I would like to thank our sponsor before we begin, Irvine Clinical Research. They're an independent medical clinic research in city of Irvine, and they provide clinical trial opportunities to sponsors and participants, and they do all kinds of interesting experiments, investigational experiments on medications and interventions. So if you're interested in finding out what they do and if you qualify for their studies, I would highly encourage you to visit their website, irvineclinical.com, to find out who they are. So thank you so much, Irvine Clinical Research, for sponsoring this presentation. I think we should go ahead and get started because we have a lot of interesting information to cover today. The first thing I'd like to talk about is some of the goals for today. We'll be talking about some age-related changes in memory. We'll talk about the brain pillars. We'll learn about possible risks and threats to brain health. We'll cover that just a little bit, but mostly we'll be talking about nutrition and diet and how that can have a great impact on our brain health. So I'd like for you to think about aging and what that means to you, because we all have different ideas and perceptions of what it means to age. And researchers at the National Institute on Aging, they sought to answer this question. This research began in the 1958, I believe, yes. And after decades of research, they were able to come down to two major conclusions. So changes that occur with aging do not inevitably lead to diseases such as dementia. A number of disorders that typically occur in old age are a result of the disease process and not normal aging. I think this is very important for us to understand that dementia is not a normal or natural part. Oh, sorry about that. There was some background noise there. Make sure that you are all placed on mute. There we go. Thank you so much. And the next conclusion is that we all age differently. So there's no single chronological timetable for human aging. It does not exist. So we know that dementia is a rapidly growing public health problem. And we know that dementia is not a normal part of aging. So we covered those two main points here. So the good news here is that there are things that we can do to lower our risk of cognitive decline. There are things that we can do, and there are modifiable risk factors that we know contribute to cognitive decline. So the existence of this modifiable risk factor shows us that there are things that we can do to lower our risk, to practice healthy aging. We'll be talking about some of those healthy practices today, especially diet and nutrition. So when we talk about aging and health, aging depends on your environment, it depends on your lifestyle, depends on your genes. So when we talk about lifestyle, this is basically your opinions, your values, your principles, your attitudes, your morals. It shapes who you are. Environment is everything that's around you. The policies, the infrastructure, the culture, the communities, and genes. This is an interesting one because although there are certain genes that are associated with longevity, there was a study called the Danish twin study that showed that only a small fraction of longevity is actually hard-coded into our genes, and the rest is predicted by lifestyle. Again, this is very empowering. This is great news because it shows us that a healthy lifestyle choices, everyday decisions that we make can help to maintain a healthy body and brain and can help to reduce risk for cognitive decline. So what are some of the normal changes related to aging? So we may find increased difficulty finding words, more problems in multitasking, mild decreases in ability to pay attention. So increased difficulty finding words. This also we call tip of the tongue phenomenon. It's that pesky feeling where the word is on the tip of your tongue. If only someone can give you a little clue, you almost got it. So young adults experience it about once a week, and older adults experience it as often as once a day. So it is very common. Also, you'll see more problems in multitasking. Again, this is very common because our brains are actually not designed to multitask. And when we multitask, we are hurting our brains, because think about it, we are rapidly switching our focus from one activity to another without giving much attention to that one task. We may also see mild decreases in ability to pay attention. So the first step in creating a memory is paying attention. And if you don't pay attention, and if you're having trouble paying attention, it's really hard for you to create memories because you're not encoding it. So later you can't retrieve it. Recall is also much slower with age. So that's why it's not uncommon for us to see these changes. And right now, if you're listening to this presentation and you're thinking, this is me, I'm noticing all these changes, you're not alone. But if you're starting to see that this is affecting your daily life, maybe it's time to check in with your physician, because there are things that are treatable, and we'll talk about what those treatable conditions are. But the good news is you can learn new things, you can create new memories, and you can improve vocabulary and language skills. So it was believed that we can only create new cells early in life, but actually that myth has been debunked, and we can actually stimulate our brains, exercise our brains to create new memories, to create new cells, new connections, and overall to have better memory ability and memory capacity. But of course, all of that takes practice and determination. So if you are noticing some changes in memory, I always like to include this slide because it's so important to be aware of these conditions. These are conditions that are known as treatable conditions. So if you're experiencing changes in your memory, check in with yourself, check in with your doctor. Is it due to nutrition or dehydration? Because there's this concept called the tea and toast syndrome. If you're not getting the proper nutrients, if you're not getting the proper vitamins and everything that you need, and it's malnutrition, that is going to contribute to changes in memory. Is it a thyroid deficiency? Is it depression? Is it medication toxicity perhaps? Maybe it's accumulating in your brain. Are you getting not enough sleep? Are you having problems with paying attention, too many distractions? It's very important to know what is causing those changes in your memory, because some of the conditions on here are treatable. Okay, now that we covered those important topics, let's dive into our 6 pillars. The 6 pillars of brain health. These are 6 ways you can love your brain. And what we will be talking about today specifically is diet and nutrition. So other than diet and nutrition, of course, it's very important to engage in physical activity, cognitive stimulation. It's important to get our numbers in check, to have our medical health in control. Very important for us to get sleep and relaxation and social engagement. So when we talk about the average American diet, what does it look like? So most of us have room for improvement. Unfortunately, when it comes to this area, we see that our diet is very high in added fats and oils, very high in meat, poultry, and fish, very little fruits and vegetable intake. So there was a report, it was a 2010 report from the National Cancer Institute, and they found that 3 out of 4 Americans don't consume a single piece of fruit a day. It is very sad, and it was about 9 out of 10 Americans don't meet the minimum daily recommended intake for vegetables. So we are not eating fruits and vegetables, and this is killing us. So it's very important for us to eat healthy, to make healthy choices. So let's talk about the Mediterranean diet. So Mediterranean diet, researchers began examining this type of diet starting in the 1960s. And they started to look at countries in the Mediterranean Sea, countries like Greece, countries like Italy, and they saw astonishing results. They saw that people in those countries are much healthier compared to Americans, and their diets are much healthier, much sustainable than the American diet. And what the most amazing result was that the heart disease and complications with the heart. They caused fewer deaths in these Mediterranean countries than compared to Western, like in the United States. And they were starting to ask questions, well, why is this? Why are they much healthier? And why is heart disease causing fewer deaths in these countries than in the United States? And they realized it's because of their lifestyle. So their lifestyle consisted of a variety of different things, but mainly the main components of the Mediterranean diet is daily consumption of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and healthy fats, and weekly intake of fish, poultry, beans, and eggs, and moderate portions of dairy products, and limited intake of red meat. So I will show you a pyramid that gives us a very nice visual of this Mediterranean diet. There are no specific guidelines because there's a lot of different countries in the Mediterranean Sea, but we do see a pattern here. And the main emphasis, you can see it on the bottom of the pyramid, this should be the core, is the lifestyle, right? People in the Mediterranean countries, it was very important for them to be very physically active, to be very socially active. Family, community, all these concepts is very important for them. So before we think about changing our diets, we should think about changing our lifestyles. So physical activity, social activity, cognitive activity, and this concept of community and family is very important to our health. So then as we go up the pyramid, we see what we should be consuming, what should be incorporated into our daily diet and what should be avoided. As you can see on the bottom, fruits, vegetables, grains, mostly whole wheat grains, olive oils, beans, nuts, legumes, seeds, herbs, and spices. These are things that we should be eating every single day, without exception. And these are things that you see on these pictures. Very healthy, you see a lot of color, a lot of variety. Then as you go up the pyramid, you see things like fish and seafood, right? These are things that we should be eating on a weekly basis, maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, not necessarily every day, like fruits and vegetables. Then we see things like poultry, eggs, and cheese. These are things that we should limit as much as possible, so very moderate portions. What is eaten rarely is meats and sweets. So people in the Mediterranean countries rarely eat meats, red meats, and they rarely eat sweets. So this is a very nice visual for you. This gives you an idea of what you should be eating every day, what you should be limiting, and what you should be avoiding. So when it comes to drink of choice, of course, water should always be your #1 choice. Try to skip things like juices because they tend to be very high in sugars, and sugars, of course, as you know, obviously are very bad for you, so we want to avoid that. Wine is also, wine is okay, and it is suggested that women should drink about 1 glass a day and men 2 glasses a day. But if you don't drink wine, you should not start drinking wine. If you do drink wine, those are the recommended amounts that you should be drinking. So if you drink any more than that, try to reduce it as much as possible. Okay, let's move on here. So let's talk about the healthy diet and what some of these terms are. So we should be talking about moderate calorie intake. What is moderate calorie intake? So all of us know how much calories we eat a day. We may not be aware exactly on what that number is, so maybe it's a good idea to measure it one day just to have an idea of how much you eat. So moderate calorie intake is trying to reduce your calorie intake below what is typical or below what is average. So I have some averages here. Adult women should eat between 1,600 to 2,400 calories a day, whereas adult men should be consuming about 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day. And we all have different dietary patterns, dietary restrictions. We all have different foods that we consume. So, our calorie intake should look different. You should be aware of how much you eat so you can try to decrease that. We should increase our omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential fats. These are fats that our bodies can't make from scratch. So it is very important that we get these fats from food. And some of good examples of omega-3 fatty acids are fish, vegetable oils, nuts, especially walnuts. Walnuts are very good for you. Flaxseed oil, and any leafy vegetables. Those are some typical examples of omega-3 fatty acids. We should also increase antioxidants. So antioxidants, there are free radicals all over our environment. And what free radicals are they are these unstable or bad molecules that get into our bodies and they damage our cells. So we need to protect our cells by increasing antioxidants to get rid of those free radicals so they don't cause harm in our bodies. And we will show you top 20 antioxidants that you should be incorporating into your diet. So there was a research that showed the number one source of antioxidants in the Western diet is actually coffee. And that's because Americans don't consume a lot of antioxidants in the first place. But coffee is not that bad for you, of course, so if you do consume coffee. Also, there was another study that showed about 2 to 3 cups of coffee actually showed a decrease in risk factors for dementias like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. If you don't drink coffee, you shouldn't start now. But if you do drink coffee, it's fine to drink coffee, just in moderate portions. Of course, tea is also very high in antioxidants, so tea is always also a good idea. We also talk about eating low glycemic index carbs. So what glycemic index is a scale that puts carbohydrate containing foods. On a scale of how it affects your blood sugar levels. So we should always be eating foods that are low glycemic index that doesn't really affect our blood sugar levels all that much. So low glycemic index foods are things that are raw whole grain foods, right? These are fruits, vegetables, beans, minimally processed grains, minimally processed pasta, low-fat dairy foods, and nuts. Just to give you an idea of what high glycemic index foods are, those are things that unfortunately we eat a lot. Those are things like white rice, those are things like rice and cakes and cereals, most packaged cereals, croissants, right? All the delicious things that we eat. So unfortunately, we need to reduce that and aim for healthy foods that don't have these harmful effects on our blood sugar levels. So here is USDA top 20 antioxidant foods. So they were able to analyze hundreds of foods for their antioxidant capacity and antioxidant concentration. And these were the top 20 antioxidant containing foods. This doesn't mean that you should be eating these foods every single day. This just gives you an idea of some of the healthy antioxidants that we should be eating and incorporating into our diets as much as possible. These are things like blueberries. They make a wonderful snack. They are also good for a sweet tooth. So prunes are also good for you. Pecans, Granny Smith apples, artichokes, red delicious apples, russet potatoes. You kind of have to be careful with that because that's not on our low glycemic index. They're kind of like in the middle, but it does contain some antioxidants. So in moderate portions, it's okay to consume. So this just gives you an idea. And don't worry about writing all of this information down because this presentation is recorded. So we will upload this on our website and we will upload this onto YouTube so you can rewatch this as much as you would like. So what should your plate be looking like? So half of your plate you want to fill with fruits and vegetables, right? You want to aim for color and variety. You want to challenge yourself, try new foods. You might actually find that there's a lot of fruits and vegetables that you enjoy that you didn't necessarily incorporate in your daily diet. You want to pack a fourth of your plate with protein and you want to choose healthy protein options. Remember, we talk about limiting your red meat intake as much as possible and incorporating healthy proteins like salmon. Another quarter of your plate should go to whole grain foods like whole grain bread, whole grains, or pastas made from whole grains. I have a great example somewhere here. Like this is yellow lentil and brown rice pasta. So this is actually not made from wheat. It's actually made from lentils and brown rice. So this is a great alternative to that. And when it comes to drink of choice, of course, you want to make water your number one choice as much as possible when we talk about limiting juices because that is always very high in sugar. But if you like to, of course, consume juices, try to read the labels and drink juices that are low in sugar, or perhaps make your own by juicing or making smoothies. So a little bit more about what we should limit. So we want to drink and eat less sodium, less saturated fats, and less added sugars. And we can do that by properly reading nutrition labels. So saturated fats, we want to avoid saturated fats as much as possible. And in order to do that, we can try to grill, broil, roast, or bake. And these methods don't add any extra fat in the first place. And we always want to incorporate extra virgin olive oil as much as possible. So if you're listening to this presentation, you want to make some healthy changes in your life, probably the first place that you want to start is replace all butters and margarines with extra virgin olive oil. That is a key staple in the Mediterranean diet. Added sugars. As we saw on that Mediterranean diet pyramid, Mediterranean countries rarely eat sweets. They rarely eat, right, sugars. But if you do eat them, try to split it with a family member. Try to limit it as much as possible. So here is what a typical diet should look like. We have some ideas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So breakfast, maybe like a spinach and artichoke frittata, plain Greek yogurt topped with berries, maybe some blueberries and strawberries. You want to get your antioxidants in there and your healthy fats. Maybe some avocado with whole grain toast. Of course, one of these things, not three of these things. For lunch, maybe you want to eat tuna on a bed of greens, maybe on some arugula with some healthy vinaigrette, salmon bowl with farro and black beans. Farro is very good for you, and I have an example of what farro looks like. I got this from Trader Joe's. It's a 10-minute farro. You can make this in less than 10 minutes, literally. It's very healthy for you, very nutritious, and great source of vitamins and nutrients. So for dinner, you want to aim for maybe chicken breast over warm grains with sauteed vegetables. Remember that pyramid that I showed you earlier? So if you're going to go for chicken one day, we try to limit it, right, as much as possible. So maybe in the next few days, you're going to try to eat more fruits and vegetables and not poultry and not meat. So we talk about meat eating it maybe once or twice a week. So maybe linguine and zucchini noodles with shrimp. So you see, seafood is incorporated a lot here. We have salmon, we have shrimp, right? So these are just some typical ideas of what you should be eating every day. So let's talk about serving versus portions. So a portion is the amount of food that you choose to eat for a meal or a snack. So my portion size can look very different to your portion size, right? We all have different portion sizes that fill us, that we consider the right amount of food. Unfortunately, the portion sizes do not always reflect the accurate serving sizes, and that is very obvious when we go out to restaurants, right? They have huge portion sizes. That doesn't necessarily mean that is the correct serving size. So serving is the measured amount of food or drink that we should be eating, such as 1 slice of bread or 1 cup or 8 ounces of milk. So many foods that come as a single portion actually contain several servings. And we see in our Western diet a portion distortion. What does this mean? So when we go out to restaurants, we see these huge portions, and it's enough to feed 2 or 3 people, right? This is not healthy for us. This is called portion distortion. So it's a new view, right, on what is normal. So a good way to avoid that is when you do go out to restaurants, maybe order 1 dish and split it between 2 to 3 people. That's a difficult one because we all prefer to have our own dishes, right? But just something to keep in mind of when you are dining out. And when you are cooking at home, maybe change the size of your plates. Maybe if you're using entree plates, which tend to be very big plates, maybe switch it to smaller salad plates, right? This gives you, this gives you a smaller portion, and you're more likely to eat less. Okay, so we're going to do a small exercise here. So a bagel 20 years ago was 3 inches in diameter and had 140 calories. How many calories do you think are in today's bagel? Let me know in the chat box. I'm curious to see what you think. How many calories are in a typical bagel today? So it used to be 140 calories. Let me know in the chat box. Do you think it's 1, 2, or 3? So Kathy says 250 calories. Jane Gregg says 350 calories. Okay, let's see what the correct answer is. So the correct answer is 350 calories. The calories have definitely gone up over the last 20 years, and bagels are much larger. They're about 6 inches. And I was actually really curious about this. So I went in my fridge and I had a bagel and I was looking at it. This is a pretty big bagel. 20 years ago, it was half this size. So we are definitely eating a lot more. So let's do, okay, cheeseburger 20 years ago had 330 calories. How many calories do you think are in today's cheeseburger? So let me know in the chat box. Do you think it's 590 calories, 620, or 700 calories? Sharon says 700 calories. Jane says 700 plus. So it's actually 590 calories, but that's still a lot of calories. And if you are, let's say, an adult woman and you're trying to consume about 1,600 to 2,400 calories. If you eat a cheeseburger, that's a lot of calories. That means everything else that you eat during the day should be fruits and vegetables. So we should, of course, try to avoid cheeseburgers because they're very high in fats and calories, and they're just empty calories. They're not very good for us. They're going to spike our blood sugar levels. So more on this concept of portion distortion, right? So looking at a bagel, a cheeseburger, spaghetti with meatballs, and a soda 20 years ago and comparing that to today. So the bagel we talked about, right? It used to be 3 inches. Now you saw that bagel, it was 6 inches. That was huge bagel. Cheeseburger used to be 333 calories. Now we have 590 calories. The calories have gone up 77%. Spaghetti with meatballs, right? What used to be 1 cup of sauce with 3 small meatballs is now 2 cups of sauce with 3 large meatballs. And we see an increase of 104% calories. Soda, let's not even talk about the amount of soda that we consume. We've gone from 6.5 ounces to 20 ounces. We see a 510% increase. So we should not be consuming soda. We should be avoiding soda as much as possible. So how much is a serving? So this gives us a very nice visual of the different serving sizes that we have. So the middle of your palm is roughly the size of meat that you should be consuming, about 3 to 4 ounces. So when you hold your hand up right here in the middle of your palm, right, 3 to 4 ounces. And keep in mind that in the Mediterranean diet, you want to limit your meat intake about 2 times a week, not every single day. And then the thumb is about 2 tablespoons or 1 serving of peanut butter. And then when you make a clenched fist, that's about 1 cup or 1 serving of leafy greens. And the tip of your index finger right here is roughly 1 teaspoon or equal portion of fat. And that is very small. So every time you're trying to incorporate butter or fat in your diet, maybe take out your index finger and see if it's that size. Most likely it's not, right? Because we use a lot of butter, unfortunately. Oops, I had another one. The front of your closed fist is about half a cup or a serving of pasta. So just to give you an idea, right? You have your best tool, your hand, and this is the best way to measure serving sizes. Okay, let's move on. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, great. So when you are shopping, there are some really great ways to smart shop and to healthy shop. So when you are going to the grocery store, it's always a good idea to go in with a grocery list. And we all know this from experience, right? When we go in with a plan, when we go in a grocery list, we're more likely to stick to that list and buy only what we need. And don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry because you tend to buy a lot of things that you didn't need in the first place. So always have a grocery game plan. shop smart to fill your cart. What does it mean to shop smart? So I have a very specific example here to show you. So let's say you want to shop for yogurt, right? You have two options. You have a 32 ounce of yogurt, which is $1.62, or you have a 6-ounce yogurt, which is just 72 cents. So when you're in a hurry, you're more likely to get the cheaper yogurt, right? Which is 72 cents. Maybe you need just that amount. You don't need 32 ounces. So you tend to go for the smaller. So you go for the 72 cents. But when you actually compare these two products side by side, you see that you're getting more for your dollar if you go with the 32 ounce. Because most grocery stores, most products, they break it down to how much you're getting per ounce. So if you get the 32 ounce yogurt, you're actually paying 5 cents per ounce. Whereas if you get the 6-ounce yogurt, you're paying 12 cents per ounce. So it's very important to read nutrition labels. So in order to read and compare and to shop smarter, of course you need some time. So it's always a good idea to do your shopping when you're not in a hurry, so you can have time to read these labels and to better understand what you're buying and what you're purchasing. Tips for choosing whole grain foods. So you always want to look at the label. You want to look for the word whole in beginning of the ingredients. So whole grain foods, or anything that's made with whole grain foods, like whole grain pastas. You want to find fiber on the label. Fiber is always good for you. Check for freshness. So when you are looking for whole grain foods, sometimes the oils, the natural oils in the whole grain foods, they tend to spoil the freshness. So it's very important to always check the expiration date, of course, to check how fresh it is. And when you are storing it, try to store it in an airtight container, very tightly sealed. And you always want to keep these in a very cool, dry place. And of course, buy what you need. So you don't have to buy it in large quantities and you store it in the freezer or the refrigerator, and it tends to get stale and lose the moisture. So it's always a good idea to only buy what you need. Now this is very difficult, especially during the pandemic, because we're trying to limit the amount of times that we go into the store. So we try to increase the amount of things that we buy to make less trips. But, of course, once the pandemic is over, we need to practice how to shop smarter and healthier. So tips for shopping for veggies and fruits. Celebrate the season, and you can do this by shopping at your local farmer's market. And this is a much less expensive way of shopping. You tend to buy fruits and vegetables that are in season, that are less costly than out of season products. Stick to your list. It's always a good idea, like I said, to go to the store with a grocery list. Meal planning is also very important because you have an idea of what you're going to eat that week, and you're more likely going to stick to that healthy plan. And if you don't have a plan, you're just likely going to consume things and buy random things, and it's not always going to contribute, right, to a healthy diet. Buy small amounts frequently. We already talked about that. Store brands equal savings. That's true in some cases. Some stores don't really offer any store brands. Most brands do, and you're likely to save more money if you tend to go for those. Keep it simple. Simple as in when you are buying foods, we tend to go for the pre-washed or the pre-cooked or the pre-sliced, the more convenient foods, but you're more likely to get the most out of your dollar if you go for the more traditional foods that are not chopped, that are not pre-cooked, that are not pre-washed, that maybe might take a bit more time to prepare, but definitely you're getting more for your money, and you are it's more healthier that way, and it's a smarter way of shopping. If you do have the opportunity, maybe plant your own, maybe start your own garden. This way you know that there's no pesticides, there's no other unnecessary things that are going into your foods. Plan and cook smart. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of improvement for us in this area. So I want to talk about how you can make these small changes that lead to big impacts. So this we talk about is a healthy lifestyle. Is not really like a diet, right? Because like we talk about in these Mediterranean countries, they do a lot of physical activity, a lot of exercise. They tend to walk more than they drive, and it's about 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Anything that get your heart rate up. to get your blood flow and oxygen levels up. So pick one thing you can do in each area that may help to improve your brain health. So if you're listening to this presentation and you know you have a lot of room for improvement, you're not necessarily sure where to start, for example, one of the things that they emphasize in this diet is very limited fats, right? Very limited sweets. So maybe you want to get rid of all the butters, you want to get rid of all the margarines, and you want to replace it with extra virgin olive oil. Maybe that's the first step that you are going to do. Or maybe when you tend to eat a lot of sweets, you're going to get rid of all your sweets, you're going to get rid of all your sugars, and you're going to incorporate more healthy options like dates or, natural raw foods, fruits and vegetables. It's very important to write down what you will do, when you will do it. You're more likely to follow through if you do write it down and you do keep track of your progress. If you miss one day, don't quit, don't be discouraged, keep going, empower yourself and celebrate your progress. So when you are making these goals, and I highly encourage you to make these goals, is to think of SMART goals. SMART goals are very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound goals. So an example of a not so SMART goal is, I will start eating healthier. So that's not a SMART goal because you can't measure it. There's no time on it, not very realistic. You don't know what to do. There's no actionable steps, right? It's not very specific. So some examples of SMART goals is, I will walk for 15 minutes 3 times per week for the next 2 weeks. Or I will eat 1 serving of vegetables 4 days out of the week for the next 4 weeks, right? You get the idea here. If it's specific, you're more likely to follow through. You're more likely to complete your goals this way. Okay, it looks like we will be maybe ending a bit earlier, so that's great because we might have time to take any questions or comments. So I wanted to let you all know about our helpline number, our 844 number right here on the screen. If you have any questions, if you would like a free memory screening, which is what we are offering right now. If you were listening to this presentation earlier and I wrote down some of the memory changes that are common, that are associated with normal aging, and you're thinking you've been noticing some of those changes, give us a call, schedule a memory screening. We'll spend about 40-45 minutes with you, getting to know you. We'll ask you a series of questions, and we'll be able to tell you if your results are within the expected range for your age and education level, or if you score outside of the expected range, what that means, if it warrants concern. So it just gives you a better idea of how your memory capacity is. So other than memory screenings, we also have information, emotional support, education, and resource referrals. Most of you are on Facebook, so I would highly encourage you all to visit our Facebook, facebook.com/ALZOC. Give us a like. We post a lot of interesting articles there. We post our latest news, our updates. It's a great way for you to connect with us and communicate with us and read the latest Alzheimer's news. You can visit our website, alzoc.org. I would like to thank our sponsor, Irvine Clinical Research. Like I said, if you want to find out about their investigational medications and their interventions to see if you qualify for one of their studies, go to irvineclinical.com. And the last thing I wanted to let you know, and Melissa also posted this in the chat box, so our next presentation will be about sleep and brain health. So we will unpack the power of sleep, we will debunk some myth, and we will give you some tips on how you can improve your rest. We'll give you some secrets to sleep. So it's a special 1-hour presentation. And if you click on the link in the chat box, you will go to the page where you can sign up. And it will be just like this class. It will be held via Zoom. I think that is all that I have prepared for you all today. I apologize if I did go a bit fast. Don't worry about this because we will, like I said, we're recording this and we'll upload it on our website. We'll upload it on YouTube so you can watch it as many times as you would like. But I would like for us to go back. Oops, let me present that again. I'd like for us to go back to the page where we have the top 20 antioxidants. Meanwhile, do you have any questions, any comments? You can unmute yourself, or you can also type it in the chat box. So also, Melissa, my co-host, reminded me that we'll be live on Facebook July 28th at 10 a.m. with some memory teasers. That's right. So go on Facebook, click like so you can be notified when we go live. And Melissa and I are going to share some memory secrets on how you can improve your memory, and we'll teach you some really interesting teasers. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, unmute yourself or type it in the chat box. If you don't have any questions, we're all done for today, and you're more than free to leave this presentation. Thank you all so much.